That's right, product placement.
Our reading this week is in 2 Kings chapter 20. If you want to go there in your Bible, 2 Kings chapter 20. And we are working with, I think, what is one of my favorite Old Testament stories.
Oh, really? Is it really?
Yeah, it's a really interesting moment in the life of Hezekiah. So maybe a little background here since you chose this reading.
Sure.
What do you... where are we in the Old Testament story?
Oh, we're getting late in the story. The northern kingdom's already been taken away captive, and it's still the era of the Assyrians. They've threatened and will threaten a little bit longer. Babylonians are not on the scene yet, but
Ezra was after the captivity.
Exile, correct.
So we've backed up now.
Yes, we're before the captivity of the southern kingdom.
Just about that period of Judah being alone.
Yeah, pretty much. We're talking, and I'm really just using around there. We're talking about 700 BC. You know, they'll be destroyed 605 to 586. So about a century. We're using really round numbers, not exactly accurate, but basically a century before their fall. But the northern kingdom's been wiped out when it should have been a warning to them.
Yep, should have. So Hezekiah
is
good guy,
good king, one of the best kings as far as the Old Testament tells us. But he's sick, and Isaiah the prophet, yes, that Isaiah of the big book in the Old Testament there,
not going to get better,
has been sent to tell Hezekiah he's going to die, which leaves him weeping bitterly. And so he prays to God. And that's really why we're here is what he says in his prayer to God, which is basically asking God to remember how I walked before you with faithfulness with a whole heart and have done what is good in your sight.
Verse 3
Correct.
is where we're talking
That's
about.
That's right, verse 3.
And so what do you see there, going back to our broader context of zealous for good deeds?
Yeah.
What do you see in this story that for you is a connecting point with that theme?
I think part of the power of that prayer is, and it wasn't an illegitimate prayer, it wasn't an accurate self-assessment.
He had been a good guy, legit.
He had been a good king. That was not some man who's oblivious or lacks self-awareness, thinking he's more than what he was. He is a man who has taken the role of kingship that he was born to in the house of David and rightly used that role for God's purposes, so that as he comes to the end of his life, he's told he's going to die, he can genuinely beseech God on the basis of the fact that I have been zealous for good works. I have taken what you have given me in my life, and I have used it the way I should for your purposes, O Lord. And the fact that God will answer his prayer and give him 50 more years is, I think, a way of God saying, I agree with that self-assessment. Not that all of us will be able to pray to God and get 15
and get more
years.
time.
But I think the point is that there is something worth thinking about what it means to come to the end of your life and face death and be able to, in all good conscience, make a statement like that God would agree with, actually, that I really have spent my life zealous for good works. Whatever my role and place is in this world, I have taken my lot in life and leveraged it for God's purposes.
And so my mind, as I ponder this reading and its implications for us, goes several different directions. Obviously, there's an application thought about whether or not I would be able to say that.
Absolutely.
That question comes to mind. But even more deeply there, will we be able to get to the end of our lives and say what Hezekiah said?
All right.
Whether you get more time or you don't get more time. I think that we're living in a season where lots and lots of people end the journey with profound disappointment and regret.
Right. I mean, that's the irony is most of us actually do tend to be honest on our deathbeds. And that's why the deathbed is a terrifying place, not just because we're facing the end and judgment beyond it, but because we are forced to realize we have not been as zealous for good works. We've not used our lives as well as we should have or could have.
Yeah. So you get a medical diagnosis, a terminal medical diagnosis, right, which is what is happening here.
Well, and
oddly, it comes from the prophet and not the doctor.
Right.
But he gets a terminal medical diagnosis, and so we process that through our lens. And where do our minds go?
Right.
I don't think most people pause and think, wow, I just bought this great new car.
Yeah, that's
right. We have that vacation next year.
Right.
it's about wife and kids and relationships, and it's about life. And can I really look at my life and see anything of consequence that I have done? And I think that's why a lot of people look back and sort of grieve their lives at the end, because I didn't really do anything with it.
Right.
I just participated in the grind.
Right. That's right. And then you realize I really wasted my life, because nothing that I've done amounts to anything when death forces the eternal perspective upon us. If I lived to worship God, if I was zealous for the worship of God, that goes with me when I die. Nothing changes.
Right.
If what animates my heart is love of God and love of neighbor, that doesn't change when I die. In fact, if anything, my death will lead to a heightening of that which is important to me. If that's what gets me up in the morning. Ironically, then I look at death and I'm able to face death with, not despair, but even I think a certain level of fear is natural. We are human. Death is unnatural, but there's also a certain anticipation that this is what I actually have been living for.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And in the absence of that, what do you have? And so to me, I'm going to be really can I just be brutal for a second, brutally honest. How stupid to live life without pondering that.
Yeah, because it's going to come for all of us at some point.
Well, and it's like people don't believe that it is, and it just is profoundly silly to behave as though my Hezekiah moment isn't going to come, when I'm going to have to stare at the end of life, and
as I pray to God, assess my life.
Yes, it's exactly right, and so as we think this year about being zealous for good deeds, it seems appropriate to add to that pondering this lens, the lens of the end. Here it's coming for me. Am I going to be able to say that I did anything of consequence? So kind of a heavy thought, yet a vital one. Maybe one worth pondering as we work in 2 Kings 20 this week.